Right, no, good, but if you have to find a silver lining, right, that this was...
Yes, but Pretoria was a hellhole, you know, because it was a center of Africana culture.
Yeah.
Joburg was very,
Right,
then
Joburg
was
much
very
more
sophisticated by then, and you know, there've been lots of ANC influences and
Right.
progressive people, but Pretoria was still staunchly Africana, very much so. And so, I thought, oh, it must have been what Montgomery was like in the Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah.
In the 1950s. I mean,
Right.
it had that sense of.
Well, but you know, it makes me think of when you were talking about when your mom moved to Alabama, right? Like, in some ways, it's like, oh, I wonder how much that was what your grandmother was thinking, right? Of what do you need? You're gonna go there.
Yes. So you know, I got stared at. I got insulted. I'm not South African, so you know, I'm not going to put up with it. You know, I don't get treated this way. And you know, and it was really interesting. Somebody even wrote a letter to the minister complaining about having these outside agitators come in. You know, and Olive made me write the response. She said, "Oh, we're polite. We're just going to accept it. You write the response." This is what happens in government. You know, letter comes. The congressman never writes the staff or always writes the response. So, for my teeth, and wrote this very polite letter about thank you for your interest, but these are experts that are helping us develop a system. Oh, I was convinced this guy was a Nazi. There was somebody I had interviewed to find out more about what their reproductive health and maternal and child health activities had been like. And it was quite clear, as far as he was concerned, there were only white people in South Africa.
Right.
You know, only white people registered their infant births. Only white people got family planning support.
Right, even though that was only 15 to 20% of the
Oh, well, there's
population
only
of the country.
people who cared. You know, and so I said, well, what do you do in the homelands? You know, what about the Black Africans living in cities? Oh, it's up to them if they decide they want to register their infant births. So they actually did not have any idea of the population, the general population, something. And I said, well, how do you decide what budget goes to the homelands? Oh, we give them some money. They can spend it on family planning, whatever they want. And I'm sure my jaw probably went, are you kidding me? And I think, and it's the next day, the letter got, within a day or 2
away.
But it was very eye-opening. So one of the things that was very interesting, in terms of thinking about the initial voting for Mandela, a lot of the news reports were about the fact that they were shocked that so many people came out to vote.
Well, that's because they had no idea how many people lived there.
No idea. Literally. So they really were shocked at how many people lived. It was funny. It was obviously a case that they weren't, they didn't have even the slightest idea what public health was about. They didn't even have vital records. They on the black.
Right.
Now, white South Africans,
totally different.
But it was a great society for them.
Oh, please!
Because there was a wonderful
heart
social
transplant.
Not only that, you registered your infant birth because that immediately meant you were going to get all kinds of social services. There'd been a report, I don't know when it was published, maybe in the 60s, about how to solve poverty in South Africa. And they did it. There were no poor white people, or hardly any, because there was this very comprehensive report looking at social needs and what kind of social network needed to be set up, And from birth until the end of college, there was wonderful support for people in South Africa who were white.
Right.
The rest of the group didn't matter.
Right. give them some money.
So I was aghast at that, but I thought, makes sense. You know, that's why people love living in South Africa so much.
Right.
As it was a wonderland. As
Right.
long as you,
As long as you were the right color,
Mhm.
right?
yeah.
That must have been just so, yeah, jaw-dropping.
Yeah, it was. But it was also exciting because, again, I was in the middle of this wonderful change.
Right, that you got there at the time where people had finally been able to vote and say, like, let's do something.
And
change
they,
things.
you know, were very creative and all the time though there was this constant pushback. I mean, the letter was just an example of how the old regime was still, in some ways, trying to sabotage what was going on. And I think the worst example of that was the Ministry of Health was trying to come up with a list of essential medicines that they would supply to all communities. And the pharmacy companies were not going to let that happen. I mean, you could see all this going on in the background. It was never overt. But there was so much resistance to coming up with these, whatever it was, 10 or 15 essential drugs, which meant they would have been generic and they would have been virtually free for everybody. So nobody was going to profit from producing them.
Right.
And I remember going to this big conference around the 10 essentials or 15 essentials, and it was clear that it was almost like these invisible lobbyists, probably not so invisible, but I couldn't tell because I didn't know that much about South Africa. But it was clear that the lobbyists were going to block that. And that sort of was that was an example of how it was clear things were not going to go well.
Right.
Because there were so many people opposing to any kind of change in the status quo, especially if it was interfering with their profit.
Right. You know, it's bad enough that you're going to make me change the way that I'm living my life. But, you know.
Yeah, the healthcare community wasn't going to make any money anymore because everything.
I remember I was in South Africa in 2010, I guess, right? With the World Cup. But it was still pre-med at the time. Was there on a clinical rotation and went through and we visited that hospital in Cape Town where they did the heart transplant.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and I mean, it gleaming.
Beautiful.
Cape Town's gorgeous, right?
Yes.
And you drive through the Cape, and I mean, it's stunning. And those hospitals are, it's like,
I'm sorry.
being in the most well-endowed hospital here.
Exactly.
Right? And then I was stationed in a rural health post out in KwaZulu-Natal, right? Out in Ladysmith. And it was just night and day.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is 15 years later. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I know I want to be mindful of your time because I know you've got stuff to do.
Thank you for staying here.
But I want to make sure if there's anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about.
Oh, I can't think of anything. I really. We had a lot more to talk about than I thought. So.
Well, you have had a pretty illustrious career yourself.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. It's really been,
And you've done really interesting and meaningful work, and some of which I know about, and a lot of which I'm discovering through this conversation. But I had no idea about that I've worked with these systems, that I knew they were there. I just had no idea that you had been involved in
it. I mean, it's always a team effort. In public health, you can't take credit for
of course, but still.
But to be in the developmental stages of all of it was just great, And then, and for me, it was wonderful having been at the beginning stages and then to come here and see how people use them and depend on them and talk about them.
Right. Well, thank you so much for, being willing to have a conversation and come back and just for, being willing to be at UNC and to let me as a student, get to spend a little bit of time with you because it really, really, really has been an absolute pleasure and an honor.
Thank you.
I mean that sincerely.
Great. Thank you. I'm looking forward to reading much about you.
Oh.
over the next
Don't put that
decades. No, and I'll be around at some of the public health meetings and stuff. So for maybe another year. I've got this train trip coming up. Another trip to Alaska and went to New Orleans. All these, I didn't spend a lot of time interior U.S., especially Western U.S. I want to get to know the country. There's so much to see here.
It really is. It really is. And every time you go someplace completely different, and people are completely different.
Yes.
That's what's interesting.
Yeah, that was another thing I enjoyed about being a CDC. I get to see, experience a lot, but I didn't spend time at the national parks.
Right, because you were working.
I was-
So.
I got to see Mount Rushmore, but that's because I was teaching an MCH epi class
But
in
those
Sioux
parks-
City.
Those
or
parks
whatever.
out on the West Coast are incredible.
Yeah. So. Thank you, Vic,
Thanks,
for
Vic.
setting this up.
Oh,
Done.
you're welcome.
This has been
Sorry
so
about
much
the
fun.
interruption.